Hello, friends. My name is Natasha. Today, I will tell you the story of my life. I'm going to share with you the sad story that happened in my life. Before listening to my story, subscribe and like this channel. If you like the story, then share it with your friends. Let's start the story. I am 32 years old, and I have 3 children whose faces are the only light in my world. When I wake up before sunrise, my first sight is their sleeping forms, curled like kittens under thin blankets. My heart aches with love for them, and with guilt that I cannot give them more. Our home is a single room with a corrugated iron roof that leaks during the monsoon. My husband, once a sweet and promising man, has long since surrendered to alcohol. The smell of cheap liquor fills the room at night. He is not cruel, but he is absent, lost inside a bottle while I struggle to stretch every rupee. I whisper to myself each morning, "Natasha, keep going." My hands are rough from scrubbing other people's floors, but my spirit clings to the dream that my children will not have to live the same life. I tell them bedtime stories about bravery and honesty so they know there is another way to live. I work as a maid in Mr. Verma's mansion on the other side of the town. The house is so large that even after a year, I still get lost in its corridors. The marble floors are always cold, and the chandeliers look like frozen waterfalls. I dust them while balancing on a ladder, thinking about the price of rice. Mrs. Verma is usually polite but distant. She hands me lists of chores and goes about her own life, never looking me in the eye. Mr. Verma, my employer, acts as if I am invisible unless he needs something. He speaks curtly, his words clipped, his tone suggesting that I am a stain on his perfect home. Still, I swallow my pride. My children's school fees depend on these wages. I clean the bathrooms, polish silverware, and iron clothes with a smile I no longer feel. The other servants keep their distance. Everyone senses the tension that floats through the house. There are moments when Mr. Verma's gaze lingers on me a little too long, and my stomach twists. He calls me into his study for trivial reasons, asking about a misplaced file, an extra cup of tea, his eyes scanning me as if I were another object to be arranged. I start wearing loose, faded saris and avoiding eye contact. I keep my voice soft, my steps quick. Inside, though, I feel a slow-burning anger. I am not blind. I know when a man looks at a woman with respect and when he looks with hunger. Each night, after putting the children to bed, I write a few lines in a battered notebook. It is my only friend, a place where I can pour my fears. I do not write Mr. Verma's name. I write only the shadow and the house. But the page trembles beneath my pen. It was a Wednesday. Mrs. Verma had gone to visit her sister in another city. The house felt emptier than usual. I was polishing the dining table when Mr. Verma called me into his study. His voice was overly friendly, and my heart began to race. Inside, the curtains were drawn. He closed the door. He spoke about giving me extra money, about how hard I worked, about how he could help me. I told him I wanted no help, only my wages. His smile changed. I will not write here what exactly happened next. I will only say that he ignored my no and my tears. Afterwards, he held up his phone and showed me a photograph he had taken without my consent. "If you tell anyone," he whispered, "your children will see this." I walked home in a fog. The sound of my children laughing that evening felt like knives in my chest. I could not tell them. I could not tell anyone. I washed my hands again and again, but the shame would not come off. The next morning, I almost didn't go to work. My legs trembled as I dressed, but then I saw my children's school bags and knew I had no choice. When I entered the house, Mr. Verma handed me a list of chores as if nothing had happened, but each time I passed him, he gave me a small, knowing smile. He began to send me messages late at night. "Come to the study tomorrow. Don't forget." Always with the unspoken threat of that photograph. My breath grew shallow. Every day felt like walking into a trap. I learned to live in two worlds. The outside world where I was a maid earning a living, and the inside world where I was a prisoner of his secret. I hid the darkness from my children, and even from my husband, who was too lost in drink to notice the change in me. At night, my diary became my only witness. "I am more than what he thinks," I wrote over and over, like a prayer. Weeks passed. Mr. Verma's arrogance grew, but so did his carelessness. He left his phone lying around. He drank more. Sometimes he bragged to his friends on the phone, his voice carrying down the corridor. Mrs. Verma started looking at me strangely. She asked once, "Are you all right?" I forced a smile and said yes, but my eyes must have told a different story. I began hiding small amounts of money from my wages in a jar under the floorboards at home. It was not much, but it was a seed of escape. In my mind, I rehearsed what I would do if I ever found courage, who I would call, what I would say. The house no longer felt like just a workplace. It felt like a stage where a drama was playing out. And somewhere behind the curtain, someone else had begun to suspect the truth. One evening, while carrying groceries into the kitchen, I stumbled. The driver, Aaron, caught the bag before it fell. "You're shaking," he said softly. Aaron was not like the others. He was older than me by a few years, with gentle eyes and a patient way of speaking. He never asked prying questions. That evening, though, he pressed a small bottle of water into my hands and said, "If you ever need to talk, I'm here." I didn't answer, but his kindness stayed with me. For the first time in months, a sliver of warmth pierced the cold around my heart. At home that night, I wrote in my diary, "Someone sees me." My children were growing. My eldest had begun bringing home prizes from school. One evening he said, "Mama, when I grow up, I'll buy you a big house where no one can make you sad." Tears burned my eyes. Their faith in me was like a mirror showing who I really was. I could not let fear define me forever. I began copying Mr. Verma's threatening messages onto paper and hiding them with my savings jar. I stopped going to his study alone, making excuses to work in other parts of the house. Verma's eyes followed me more closely now. Arun sometimes asked quietly, "Are you safe?" And I would nod. But my nod was beginning to mean, "I'm planning." Inside me, a small, stubborn flame had started to burn. I didn't yet know how or when, but I knew I would not live in chains forever. The house felt heavy with secrets. Mrs. Verma had returned from her trip, but her eyes were different now. Sharper, questioning. She asked me to stay late one evening. I feared another trap, but when I entered the sitting room, she was alone, her husband out. "I found these on his phone," she said quietly. In her hand was a series of messages, one of them to me. My knees went weak. She guided me to the sofa. "Tell me," she said. "Tell me the truth." For a moment I could not breathe. All the shame I had been carrying pressed against my ribs. Then, like a dam breaking, the words poured out. The first day, the photograph, the threats, the nights of terror. I told her everything, trembling. When I finished, Mrs. Verma's face was pale with anger. Not at me, but at her husband. "You are not to blame," she said firmly. He is. For the first time in months, I felt. The next day, she called me into her room. I'm taking him to task, she whispered. But we must be careful. She had already copied the photograph and the messages to a secure drive. She had called her lawyer. I will protect you, she said. Her voice was steady, like a hand on my shoulder. That evening, Mr. Verma came home drunk. In the middle of dinner, his wife stood up and slammed her phone on the table. You will never touch her again, she hissed. He blustered and denied it, but she had the evidence. She told him she would go to the police and the press if he tried to retaliate. I was not in the room when she confronted him fully, but I heard raised voices through the door, the sound of a plate breaking. Later, she emerged and said simply, It's done. He won't hurt you again. I did not go back to work the next day. Mrs. Verma helped me file a statement at the women's cell of the local police. She gave me an envelope with my unpaid wages and a little extra to tide me over. This is not charity, she said. Arne, it's what you're owed, and you deserve justice. Walking out of that house felt like stepping out of a shadow. The sun on my face seemed brighter than it had in years. My hands were still trembling, but they were free. At home, I told my children only that I had left that job. They saw the relief in my eyes and hugged me tightly. My eldest whispered, Mama, you're strong. In that moment, I believed him. Freedom was not simple. I had nightmares for weeks. Sometimes I woke up thinking I was still trapped in that study. But day by day, the nightmares faded. I started attending a support group for women at the community center. We sat in a circle, drinking tea, sharing our stories. Each time I spoke, the knot in my chest loosened a little. I used my small savings and Mrs. Verma's help to start a catering service from my home, cooking meals for office workers. It was hard work, but honest work, and it was mine. Arun, the driver, left his job at the Verma house soon after. One day, he came to my door with a bag of vegetables and said, For your new business. His smile was shy, respectful. I felt my heart stir, not with fear, but with possibility. Starting my own small catering business was like learning to walk again. I woke at dawn to grind spices and roll dough while the children got ready for school. I delivered lunch boxes on foot at first, then on a borrowed bicycle. The work was hard, but no one raised their voice at me and no one threatened me. Every rupee I earned felt clean. I also went to the support group every week. Listening to other women talk about reclaiming their lives gave me courage. Slowly, I began to laugh again. I began to believe that my story did not have to end in darkness. Arun visited often, first with groceries, then with small repairs around the house. He never pushed, never pried. Sometimes he sat at the kitchen table while I kneaded dough and told me stories from his village. His voice was calm and warm, like the low hum of a song. One evening, after the children had gone to bed, I found myself telling him about my dreams. To send my eldest to college, to own a small shop one day. He listened without pity, only interest. When he left, he said, You're stronger than you think, Natasha. The words stayed with me like a blessing. Trust is not a door you open in one day. After what I had been through, the thought of loving someone terrified me. But Arun never hurried me. He respected my silences and my boundaries. We began taking the children to the park on Sundays. He taught my youngest to fly a kite. He helped my daughter with her school project. Seeing him with them made something soften inside me. It was not the dizzy feeling of infatuation. It was steadier, like water filling a dry well. One night, while we were cleaning up after a large catering order, he reached for my hand and then stopped. "Only if you want," he said softly. I looked at his hand, then at his eyes, and for the first time in years, I felt safe enough to say yes. Our relationship grew in small, deliberate steps. He would ask, "Are you comfortable?" Before making plans, he told me about his own mistakes and hopes. We laughed, we argued, we cooked together. He never tried to erase my past. Instead, he said, "What happened to you was wrong, but it does not define who you are." His respect was like sunlight on a wound, helping it to heal. The children blossomed in the new atmosphere. They no longer tiptoed around my moods. They teased Arun, called him uncle, asked him questions about the world. Our home, still small, felt warmer and lighter. Laughter returned like an old friend. My eldest began tutoring younger students to earn pocket money. My daughter started drawing pictures of our family with a new figure in it, a tall man holding her hand. When I saw that drawing, my eyes filled with tears, but they were happy ones. One evening, the leader of the support group asked me to speak at a local women's meeting. My hands trembled as I took the microphone, but when I began to tell my story, a hush fell over the hall. I spoke of fear and shame, but also of courage and community. When I finished, women came up to me and whispered, "Thank you. You gave me hope." In that moment, I realized I had stepped out of the role of victim and into the role of survivor. A year later, Aaron asked me to marry him. He did not kneel or produce a ring. He simply held my hands and said, "I would like to build a life with you if you want." I said yes. We held a small ceremony at the community center. My children stood beside me, proud and smiling. There were no chandeliers, no marble floors, only flowers, laughter, and freedom. For the first time, I wore a sari I had chosen for myself, not for modesty, but for joy. Now, as I sit at my kitchen table writing these words, the smell of fresh bread fills the room. Arun is helping my youngest with homework. My eldest is preparing for his college entrance exam. Outside, the evening sun paints the sky gold. I think back to the woman who walked every day into that mansion, carrying shame and fear. She is still a part of me, but she is no longer the whole story. I am Natasha. I am a mother, a businesswoman, a wife by choice, a survivor, and a woman who found her own voice. This is not a fairy tale. It is a journey from darkness to light, from silence to speech, from coercion to love built on respect. And as I close my diary tonight, I write one final line. I am free.